Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here. As we wrap up season 7 of the podcast, there were some topics I wanted to dive deeper into. In the last episode, I spoke about how hormones affect our masculine and feminine essence. And I started to touch upon gender roles, but I really want to go deeper and expand upon what gender roles are, what they mean, and how they affect our relationships and the creation of divine union. In the last episode, what I really did was I laid out the fact that we all have masculine and feminine within us. And generally speaking, women want to be more feminine and tend to be more feminine. And some are not in their feminine at all and have never even known what it feels like to be really in the feminine. And when you have tasted it or touched it, it is one of the most nourishing things because it's how we were designed to be. And similarly for men, men desire and want to be masculine. And when a culture has been created where that's challenging, or when relationship dynamics make it challenging, also for women, relationship dynamics can make it challenging to be feminine and for men to be masculine. And I'm going to share some examples of that so we can have more self-awareness. And through my years of working in polarity work and tantra and relationship work, I have seen where men and women have been the happiest. Generally speaking, of course, there's always the exception, but I'm speaking general here, is when women get to be feminine in their relationship and in their life mostly, and when men get to be masculine in their relationship and in their life. And when we start to understand and know that we are the creators of our life, we get to decide how we are being, how we are thinking, how we are embodying and feeling. It's actually a choice. It is a path of mastery to be able to decide how you want to be expressed in the world. And at the same time, it's a gift to understand these topics, because the moment you understand something, then you can shift it. Then you can change it. So the classic example that I talked about in the last episode is the hunter-gatherer, right? Where the man, now of course there are exceptions, but where the man is generally the hunter and where the woman was generally the gatherer. And as I explained in the last episode, which I do invite you to, and it makes her really good at multitasking. That makes her really good at gathering the berries, right? There's some there, there's some there, there's different types, and you can kind of be in many places at once. And in terms of the gender role of the man being the hunter, it makes sense because of testosterone. So the man can go and focus his energy with his testosterone to find that deer or whatever animal they were going to hunt and get the kill and bring it back for everyone to eat. So classically, because of our genetic makeup, there are certain roles that each one serves better to be. So if we fast forward to modern day, generally speaking, women did really well at managing the house because of all the different factors that come into play, the multitasking aspect of it. You can be cleaning while you're cooking, and then the dishes and the ironing. And right, classically speaking, women have better superpowers for this. Right now, it doesn't mean that a man can't do it. Of course they can. And especially men that are more connected to their feminine nature, they like that more. Whereas when we think of business creation, this really requires a masculine energy to stay focused on the goals and the planning and the structure, and to really keep. So this type of determination and discipline that it takes to create something from nothing is masculine energy. Now, women do that too in the form of creation, right? When we are creating life inside of us, but that path of creation happens naturally. There's nothing we have to do. It's more of a being type of creation. Whereas creating a business, for example, or building a house, it's like you're seeing it through to the end. And there's a plan and there's a structure and there's even some rigidity involved in that and discipline. And that is very masculine energy. So it made sense that men generally fulfilled that role. So that's why when we hear about gender roles, they do exist because we are divinely and genetically designed to do certain things based on if we're a man or a woman. Like, for example, generally speaking, women are known to be the more intuitive of the genders because of our womb and the nature of the womb, whereas the masculine is generally known to be the builders, right? And so even carrying heavy things, men have more shoulder muscles and arm muscles. Like they know they can carry heavier things. They can do the tougher work because of genetics, because of design. So it's important that women heal this aspect of themselves that thinks like, oh, I don't need men to do anything. And rather celebrate. Like, one of the things I love the most about men is like they can open the jars that I can't. They can carry the things that I can't, or that would just stress my system. I don't want to have knots in my muscles. If I don't have to carry things, why not let the gender that is more adapt do it? Right. And so it's interesting when women decline health, it's like, receive, women, because receiving is a feminine principle. And when we look at our anatomy, like our vagina, we receive there. And it is based on the man's anatomy. He is a giver, right? With the penis, he gives to the woman, and the woman receives. So this is all divine and biological design. Gender roles are real. And what I talked about in a lot of the episodes of this season of the podcast, this season 7, was how things like the patriarchy and feminism really distorted and traumatized people to think that gender roles don't exist, and maybe that even gender doesn't exist. We have a biology. Our chromosomes say X or Y. Our DNA expresses hormones, testosterone and estrogen. And based on these things, you exist on a spectrum of masculine and feminine, but you are biologically a man or a woman. Period. The end. Right? So because of your genetic makeup, you are predisposed to some things more than others. Now, your DNA is not always what's expressed because we have environmental factors. So because of environmental factors, your hormones may change. And some women do have more testosterone and are more masculine in nature. And some men have more estrogen and are more feminine in nature. And that's okay. And it's so important to connect to what is your truth and not what society has programmed into you. So, for example, I grew up in New York City. So the gender roles are where I did see a lot of women working. And more as the years went on, and even by the time I was in medical school, I think we were the first medical school class to have more women than men in our class at NYU. So there was, for so many years, just this program and gender roles of like women stay at home and men work. And then as women wanted to express more in the world, which is beautiful, do that, but not at the expense that there's pressure and you have to. Because if a woman hustles really hard and overworks beyond what is her natural inspiration and capacity, this is when she will experience burnout. The same is true for men, but what's interesting about men is competition and hard work is actually good for men. It helps with testosterone production. Men feel more like men and feel good the more they're doing, whereas women feel more like women the less we are doing and the more we are being. So that's why there is this natural rhythm in biology and state of being that women like to be in and flourish and thrive in. For example, if a man goes to the gym and pumps iron and really lifts a lot of weights, his testosterone is going to go up. But if a woman was to go and do that, her cortisol levels can go up, which is a stress hormone, because it's too much on the system that it actually creates stress. And the same is true for cold plunges. With men going super, super cold, it's great for them. It increases testosterone, it does all that. But if a woman goes, I think it's above 6 degrees, below 6 degrees Celsius, I think it's that number. But there is a number, a specific number in set point that if a woman goes into that cold water, instead of it creating benefit, it creates stress and she increases cortisol levels, and then it actually is a detriment to her health. The same is true at the workspace. So it's really important to know that men and women are not equal. Gender roles exist because we're not equal. And the more that we realize that, and instead of making the other person wrong, the other gender wrong for not being like us, right? So for women thinking, oh, men are stupid if they can't multitask and listen at the same time as they do. No, rather it's celebrate that, right? And similarly for men, you expecting your woman to be equal 50-50 partners. That's not what you want. You want her softness. You want her to have space and time to rest. You don't want her to work as hard as you do because you're going to then be two men in the space. For polarity and attraction and chemistry to exist, different energies must exist, like a magnet, a plus and a minus. And then when that happens, it's like opposites attract. There's so much more magnetism in the relationship. So when we were talking in some of the episodes about who should pay, a man or a woman, in reality, that's not really the question. It's about what does it represent when a man is stepping into that provider role and is a leader. And it shows what it reflects is his discipline, his capacity to see things through to the end, his determination, his drive, right? All of these are what are the results of a man who's able to provide. And when a man is making more than enough money, I truly believe that he wants to provide. It's when there's fear, when there's lack, when maybe a man is not making as much as he would like, instead of looking within, he might want to point fingers and say, well, what do you provide? You have to provide to this relationship, right? Instead of him just stepping up to realize what he wants to realize in the world and to realize the amount of money he wants to realize. And then for a woman, a lot of women overwork as a way to be loved. So there's a trauma response in hustling and overworking. Now, there's one thing, of course, if a woman has a gift to express in the world, but a woman who's hustling to pay the bills, it will be really hard for her to soften into her feminine nature. And she'll likely be stressed out, and she'll likely be hardened by the world and all of the demands that are being placed upon her. So it kills polarity when a woman has to work really hard or equally hard. Now, that's not to say if a woman wants to become a doctor because she loves it that she can't. Of course she can. Is she setting up her practice and her work in a way that nourishes her? So there are certain things that we both do, men and women, like go to medical school or go through certain trainings or go through college. Then when it's time to be in the work field and the workforce, a lot of women stepped into a masculine paradigm of a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, which is basically saying you have to be on all the time. This is not healthy for women. Women go through a weekly 4-week cycle, the menstrual cycle, where at different moments of the month, our capacity to do is more or less. Around the time of ovulation, it's more. We can do so much. We literally are unstoppable. We can take over the world. We can do more than men. But in the week right before and when we bleed, the week before we start to wind down and the days closer to bleeding, we need to rest more and more and more. And it's really hard for us to do anything. If anything, we go into a bit of a crisis mode if we don't take enough time to rest throughout the month. And then the days of bleeding, this is when we're losing life force energy. So our capacity for output is practically zero. And to be in highest health, it's best to rest on those days. Now, of course, if you are really good at listening to your body, you might find that you have energy during your menstruation, and that's okay. But it's about honoring the truth of what's happening in the body and not forcing and going against it. Whereas for men, testosterone peaks every morning. So for men up and out of bed early, that's healthy. That's what their body is telling them to do. But when women try to operate like men, this is a recipe for disaster. And similarly, if we women tried to get our men to be in our rhythm, that would be disastrous for them. They would feel bored. They wouldn't want to sleep in. Of course, when there's rest that needs to happen or it's the weekend after a busy time of work, of course, men may want to sleep in. But generally speaking, we are a different species. So, of course, there's gender roles. And because a woman creates life inside of her, that is a gender role that only women can do. Only women can carry babies and have babies. The end. And so, because of this biological process, it is natural that men become the providers and are the providers, providing the safe space, the safe home, providing the meals, providing what is needed for that life to be created. And even for a woman to have healthy hormones to be fertile enough to ovulate and have a child, stress levels need to be low. So if there's a stressful work environment or there's stress for a woman to produce outcome, to produce money, to produce, this could create stress in the body that creates infertility because growing conditions must be optimal for a life to come through a woman. Otherwise, you're stressing the child, you're stressing the body of the mother. And then this is why we see things like hyperemesis gravidarum when a woman is very nauseous during her pregnancy. A lot of times, this is a biological mechanism that makes the woman sit still and not be able to do anything else but grow life inside of herself. So, women, we ease up our life when we actually listen to the body, not when we push against the natural rhythm of our clock. Whereas men, competition and exercise and having that pressure to provide and all of that, that's good for your testosterone levels. It causes your testosterone levels to go up. If you procrastinate and you're lazy and you're kind of just moseying around and not in your purpose, this is going to be detrimental to your hormone levels and you're not going to feel well. You're going to feel depressed. So women were designed for certain tasks, and it's mainly to be for nurturance. This is what we know as the feminine energy, like divine. When we think of the word even divine feminine, we think of that nurturing, caring, soft, receptive, relaxed, intuitive, loving energy. And when we think of divine masculine energy, we think of protector, warrior, provider, strength, courage, determination, discipline, integrity, action. So there are clear and obvious masculine and feminine traits that are inherent to all of nature. We even see this when birds are making their nest. Of course, both participate, the male and the female bird. Just like if a man and a woman were to buy a house together or create a house together, they're both part of the process. Usually the man is lifting the furniture around and the woman is adding all the extra accents and details because they have different gifts. They have different strengths. This is to be celebrated. We are not equal. We are not equal. We are not equal. Men and women are not equal. We are complements. We complement each other. We each have gifts that the other receive and benefit from. So it serves you to be the feminine woman, and it serves the man to be the masculine man. Of course, there are exceptions where a woman may be more masculine and the man may be more feminine, and they come together and it works because it's still opposites attract. But generally speaking, usually 90% plus, the desire is for the woman to be in her feminine, for her to receive, for her to be softer, for her to take more of that nurturing role, not the provider role, and for the masculine, the man, to be masculine, and for him to provide and be in his purpose and show up. Now, I am a big fan of creating feminine-led business. So as a woman, absolutely, you can have a business. I think of women who have incredible talents and gifts and intuitive capacities. And we see this, right? In my genre of work, there are women, we are a generation of women that are out earning men even. But the moment it becomes pressure to provide versus the gift of sharing and offering our gifts to the world, that's where the imbalance happens. That's where the burnout and the stress levels and the sickness and the fatigue can come in. And so this is why it's so important to create a life that really works for you and to find the relationship dynamic that really works for you and to be each other's complement. And with that, it requires the man to show up in a way that helps the woman soften into her feminine, and equally a woman to show up in a way that helps the man step into his masculine power and leadership role. And that requires women not to control, not to mother our men. So we're equally responsible women, just like we want men to step into the provider role so that we could soften into our feminine. That requires us women to lean back and receive and allow our men to lead us. And if you feel he can't lead you, then he's not the right man for you. But you always want to look within and see, where am I being controlling? Where am I overpowering my man and it's causing him to shrink and go into the feminine position because I'm in my masculine? So we ladies can also polarize our men into the feminine if we're too masculine, too bossy, too much telling them what to do, too much mothering them and criticizing them and saying, that's not right, that's not how you do it, even though there's more than one way to bake a cake, right? So the intention of this season 7 of the podcast, which I invite you to go back and listen to all the episodes, is to really reflect on your role in how you co-create romantic relationship, whether you're single or in a relationship, whether you are the man or the woman. Really see, what's the work for me to do here? Not try to change your partner, but first and foremost, looking within. And especially if you're single, looking within, because as you look within
and you have self-awareness around where you contribute in ways that don't serve relationship and where you do, and wanting to highlight that. And as you shift and evolve into more of the type that can show up in the world and the kind of love and partner that you with, because that's really the fascinating part. The fascinating part is that we are as much responsible for the co-creation and the type of relationship that we live. So the moment I say, okay, I desire to be feminine in my relationship, and I do that work to heal whatever wounds, traumas, contractions, control mechanisms, I meet a different kind of man. There's no one out there that's the problem, ever. It's also my responsibility when I meet someone, if they're not an aligned match, to say no, thank you. So we're equally responsible for what we experience and live in our life based on the choices that we live. Right? And same for men. Men, if you really desire a soft feminine woman, then you want to step up in your provider role. If you feel that you are not fully in your masculine potential, then you do that work to rise up into it. You do the healing work, the spiritual work, whatever it takes. And more men are doing that. And as we talked about in some of the episodes, more and more men's circles are being created. More and more men are doing this work. And you can see of all the men, the male coaches and experts that I had this season on the podcast, there's men doing this work. And it's important for both men and women to realize the gender roles, especially based on the type of relationship you want to live. And we are in a new era of humanity where it's true that women can out earn men and all of that, but it doesn't mean that a man shouldn't be any less in his purpose. And it doesn't mean that a man still can't provide, even if he doesn't make as much. Every relationship will have and create the rules that you want within coupleship. And it's important that you really speak, voice, embody, and be what you want to be in relationship, and then attract in the match for that. Not try to change someone else, but ideally find your ideal match. And so I trust that the season of the podcast was really serving. If you are looking for coaching, healing, transformational work to support you in embodying your masculine or your feminine even more, or if you're in coupleship and as a couple you're wanting to enhance your polarity and really step into divine union level relationship, I invite you to reach out to me. And with that, I send you so much love. Subscribe to the podcast. There are incredible bonuses to support you in doing the work. The bonuses are like the first step into a deeper transformation. And it goes beyond just the philosophy and the talk of the podcast episodes, but it's more advice as well as healing and transformational exercises to support you in your greatest becoming and stepping into and as the man and woman you really know you're here to be on the planet. And my biggest advice and takeaway is to honor, revere, respect the opposite sex, the opposite gender, and remember that they are your complement, your partner in life, and we do need each other. And so I send so much love and blessings for the co-creation of your divine union, for the healing of the man-woman relationship. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Big kiss and bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the ascension path with me and for doing this great work.